If it ain't broke, don't fix it, update it. We're here in the south of France with the new G Wagon. This is the new G63, and today we're going to take it everywhere. We're talking off-road, we're talking rally stages, we're talking a canyon drive as well. Welcome to the launch of the electrified G Wagon, the V8 right here with the 48-volt system. Plus later, I'm going to get behind the wheel of the new G580 with EQ, formerly known as the EQG. Now, there's a lot to talk about. It's been about 2 years since I sold the Shmeemobiles G63. That time has flown by, but I was waiting for the update, waiting for the facelift, waiting for the new model. It's now here, and today you're coming along for a first drive. We're surrounded by G's new and old, but today we're really going to get into the nitty-gritty of this thing. Really, this is where the new G63 as we know it was born, the 1993 first gen G Wagon with a V8. I actually drove that car yesterday to get a feel for what these used to be like. It's just been raining, so the cabriolet is still undercover, but we've got G's of all sorts. In fact, down over there, we have some of the real monsters of the G Wagon family, the likes of the 6x6, not the one that Top Gear drove, but still a beast nonetheless. The Maybach G650 Landaulet, the very one that I rode in when I was filming lions on safari in South Africa 7 years ago. That's the same car. There's a whole lot more though, because G are kind of their own thing, working with Maybach, working with AMG, working with the Mercedes-Benz family from their base in Graz with the Schokl, the famous mountain where these cars are tested, which I've ridden up and down before, and it's quite the experience. Today, however, we've got all sorts of road layout in front of us. The G63 over here is awaiting, and I want to find out whether it's going to be time for another one of these. I look away for a moment and another G Wagon has arrived in Sunset Beam, the lovely orange paint. Also, that is a G65 at the end of the lineup, which I also drove from the previous generation. V12 is cool, but handling moved on a lot when they went to the next gen. In fact, that is the 300,000th G Wagon ever made. They've now made over 500,000 of these things, but this is the latest gen. This is the all new, as they call it. I'm going to call it revised, updated, reworked, latest generation G63. The car with the 4-litre bi-turbo V8, the car with nearly 600 horsepower, but the car that is still immensely capable. And today we're going to find out just how much so and talk about all of the changes, all of the updates, all of the upgrades, everything that's gone into it. Hi guys, I'm Shmee. Hello and welcome back to the channel, where you join me today here in France with the new G63. It's early in the morning, the sun has just come up, but we've got an amazing day ahead to discover the new G. Now, where we're heading is to the Mercedes-Benz test facility in Perpignan. The last time I went there was for the first drive in the predecessor to this, the new G63 at the time, and that went on to be an expensive day as one then followed to join the Shmeemobiles. So stick with me, it remains to be seen later on what I'm going to think of this and what the future might entail. When we get there though, after an amazing drive on the roads locally, we're going to be spoilt to a look at a lot of different things like cutaways of the cars, some of the components that are underneath the skin, along with the full range of the latest generation Geländewagen. Now this is the G63, which, like I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There are subtle updates, some things that happen within, but to quickly run through a walk around to show you the things that visually give away that it's a new car. Come in a little bit closer. We start at the front, this new look front bumper. We've got the 3 vertical slats surrounded by this new AMG style. We've got more optional carbon fiber, the trim parts that you have right on the front bumper. We've also got the dark chrome, a full-to-back crest that is now an option going forwards for the range. Come round towards the side, we've got the carbon fiber protective strips running around. There are big changes up here on the A-pillar. It used to have this style coming down here as well, but this has 2 benefits. Number 1, increases the top speed. Number 2, reduces the wind noise. So I'm looking forward to finding out what that's like. Come round to the side, we've also now got black as an option for the side steps, plus back here, we've got the black exhaust tips as well. Keep coming towards the back, and again, not really significantly changed. Carbon fiber for the wheel cover, slightly different look to the bumpers. One big change though is the introduction of having keyless. So of course, a press of the button to lock it, a touch on the back to unlock it, but still having the familiar feel of a G Wagon door. Inside, updates to the new style steering wheel, the new central console. We'll go through all of this in more detail a little bit later on, but today we need to get on the road. We need to go and drive this thing. That always sounds amazing, to find out what the new G63 is like, firstly, on the road. The 300,000 car is heading off. I hadn't noticed before, but a bird didn't think too much of where we had parked. Anyway, let's step in here to get this started, to get today underway. So first up, because we have the V8 up front, press the button. It's a very different start feel, actually, the way that it powers. Obviously kick-started by the 48 volt system. We've got a route ahead though, the road is calling, the sunshine is out, it is a beautiful day, let's go. This all feels fairly familiar at the moment. Into gear. This is really the sum of a series of changes. The steering wheel is a big change. It's a lot chunkier than before, and I'm normally a fan of slimmer steering wheels. That noise is still amazing, but we do have a couple of hours now to go out and drive. And the question is going to be, do you feel the extra weight? Obviously now equipped with the battery system. Do you feel the changes that have gone into it? A lot has been reworked, and we shall find out as we explore through the French countryside, and quite literally, the small and wonderful roads that we're going to be heading down through the vineyards here towards the off-roading facility a little bit later on. Oh, it feels good to be back in a G-Wagon. We are exploring the French countryside. This is, well, immediately bringing back memories to me of the drive very similarly with this car when it was introduced. And having just driven, like I said, the G65 of the older G-Wagon, this thing is a massive, massive step on. I mean, I'm in comfort right now, just cruising, right? Letting the 9-speed AMG speed shift do its thing. We have 585 horsepower. We have this additional EQ technology. So in here, effectively the 48 volt system gives you an extra 20 horsepower and 200 Newton meters of torque, which means your 0 to 100, 62 miles an hour, shaves by some fractions of a second. Everything just gets a little bit more responsive. As we're cruising in comfort, obviously it's wafty, it's kind of all over the place. It's still a G-Wagon. It still has all of the traits of a G-Wagon. Turn it up though now with all of the controls on the steering wheel. Sport Plus, I can go manual. There's actually a new manual button right in the very center with the G modes. Compress that also. And there's some good sound. It's changed. Obviously, a lot more of that is now speakers kind of pumping sound in. Obviously, sound regulations, exhausts, everything on that front has had to dial down a notch. It's a new generation, it's a new era. We just have to kind of accept that. Put a foot down, waiting for the shift there as I went for it just a tiny little bit too late. There's a nice poke to it. Now, a few things that have changed that you wouldn't necessarily know. Subtle things, subtle small details. The screens, touchscreen now, Android Auto. I can have my Waze open and cruise with that. The automatic air conditioning now has, to be honest, like BMWs have done for many years, the option to have various stages of auto AC, which I quite like, because sometimes you don't want the fans blowing really, really hard in a manual setting constantly. Of course, we've got all of the creature comforts and luxuries, so I've got my seat ventilation on, we've got heated seats as well. You've got all of the sensors, adapters, readers imaginable. Blind spot monitoring, lane assist, and of course, like all new cars, we have the automatic beeping when you go over the speed limit, even if you go over what the car thinks is the speed limit. However, one thing that Mercedes have done really well is that, unlike in a Ferrari where it's 14 presses of different buttons to get into the menu to turn it off, in here it's a long press and hold of the mute button on the steering wheel, and that does everything. That turns it back on, press and hold it again, that turns it off. Regulations mean that has to come on every single time you get into any new car delivered after June 2024, I believe. So it's just something that we have to get used to. But at least in here, they've done a nice job of making it very easy to get rid of it if you don't want. And that is certainly very helpful. The last stint has been the most mundane and stressful drive. An hour and a half or so sitting in traffic jams on the auto routes. Not exactly what you want. However, we are now back in the good stuff. And this is quickly bringing back memories of my drive in the G63 when it arrived a few years ago, and how much fun it was. Because sure, on the one hand, on the highways, leave it in comfort, adaptive cruise control, great high seating position, see everything that's going on around you, really pleasant place to be. There's a step down in wind buffeting, but remember you still have this very vertical windscreen in front of you, so obviously it's going to bring some wind noise. Here though, I should be putting this into Sport Plus. I should be making sure, yes we are, still in manual, and basically having an absolute blast, because this is the type of thing that you don't think a G63, considering how big and heavy it is, should be able to handle in the way that it does. You can enjoy these types of roads It's not obviously a supercar. It's not the craziest, most dynamic thing that's ever been made, but it's a lot of fun. I remember getting some tire squeal out of the car before on some tighter, twistier stuff and being like, yeah, that's just epic. It has a V8. There's this nice soundtrack. Long live the V8, although I will hop into the EQG, now the G580 a little bit later on, to get a bit of an experience with that for the first time. Regardless, lots of torque, lots of poke. It does all of the hybrid stuff with the 48-volt system in the background. You really don't pay any attention to that. It's just happening and doing what it does. And then on the other hand, you come towards a town, a village again, you can rotate this back into comfort, go back into auto, press the button right there in the center. Haven't started playing with the off-road and diff lock modes, but just chill, just cruise and just enjoy it. And it gets a lot of attention, in a good way and a bad way. Lots of good attention on the drive that we've had over here. A few quite aggressive moments though, I have to say. Might be because of the Hyper Blue Magno paint, which is very in your face. Might just be because we're in a German registered car here in France, I have no idea. But certainly something that has been standing out on our journey. Drop it down to second. It gets some move on. Fair bit of body roll through the corner. But you know what? It's an absolute riot. This thing is hilarious to drive, and that's in stock form, remember? You could play around with it. There are lots of different packages, and I've driven so many different variants of the G Wagon over the years, so many different exhaust systems, wide body packages, Mansory, GCD recently. We're gonna be able to pull out here? Yeah, there's a bit of traffic, but hey, we've got the power, right? So, whoops, still in manual. No auto upshift, which is kind of interesting. You would expect a car like this to always auto upshift. I actually quite like that it doesn't. You still have to do something. You still have to be a little bit involved. Anyway, sun is blasting through the sunroof above me. We're not too far from where we're actually headed. I can actually remember the road that I'm currently driving, and it's about to get a whole lot of fun. But what's really interesting with this G Wagon is the breadth of capability, right? If you think about what these started as back in 1979, the original G, effectively taking a rugged off-road military-like vehicle and making it something to sell to customers. It was in '93 they put a V8 in it, almost as a bit of a test from the previous gen, more comfortable traditional road cars, stick it in a G Wagon, make less than 500 of them, sold like hotcakes, and that really started what we know now as the G63. And of course there are people who use these in, let's say, the right way, you know, out in the dunes, across the desert, on snow and ice, all sorts of interesting environments. There are plenty that get driven around town, that just get used as almost daily cars, a bit of a status symbol, a bit of a fashion symbol. This is actually the part of the road. God, but what's so crazy to me is that this has not only the ability for some immense off-roading, as we're about to experience, but also you come to a road like this, and it's actually surprisingly capable. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd probably prefer to be here in my AMG GT Black Series, but nonetheless, this thing gets a move on. It absolutely hauls, and it still sounds pretty good. The fact that it's got a V8, okay, sure, it's a little bit more piped in and not quite as natural as these things used to be, but hey, it's still a whole lot of fun, a really cool thing to drive, and it just has this massive range. At one end, you know, we're sitting up, got great view even while there's traffic here for some reason. Kind of see over every other car on the road. You're huge on the road, but without a massive footprint. It's not as big as it looks, so for parking it's actually still kind of manageable. Yet the other end, put the foot down and it does that, which is just hilarious. We are arriving then. This is all very familiar. We're going to be heading out that way shortly, and in theory in the car park here are a ton of G Wagons. Oh, check this out. There is a total mix. We've got the electric cars. Actually on the right, that's a G63, but this whole lineup, and this is the thing, right, because you can now spec a normal grille even on the G580, so those are obviously EQGs, G580s there, but you can also spec them with the normal looking grille. Look at the different colours. The yellow looks amazing. That's really cool, actually. And the orange one in front, the satin bronze, is without the spare wheel on the back. There are so many different options, because the idea with the G Wagons has always been, well, G manufacture exclusivity, customization. You can have your perfect G. And look at this as well, the cameras and different viewing angles that this thing has. In fact, if I put it forwards, check this out. No, I don't want that, I want the 3D camera. Look at this. You've got this amazing 3D view of everything that's around. It's really clever. This has some amazing, amazing stuff on it. And then obviously you've got all of the different towing view icons and modes and angles as well. Basically, put it this way, there's a ton of different cameras, a ton of different settings. You've got the auto park, all of this, set it all up. I can't remember exactly what you press. There we go, just look at the back. Yeah, there's a lot going on. Let me show you a few things. Then I don't know what I'm going to be hopping into next, but there's a lot to get done. While I'm in here, let me show you a few more things that have changed slightly. There's a new style to the carbon fiber inlays. Inside here, of course, we now have USB-C charging, wireless charge pad with their phone in here, heated and cooled cup holders, this new style touchpad. Of course, the old one had the much beefier pad in the center, the older MBUX system. This all works really well, to be honest. It's been very smooth, very quick, very efficient. You can control the right screen from here and the left screen, or the screen right in front of you, from that side. Lots of different settings. G modes we're going to get to. Obviously around here, camera, driving settings, favorites, your infotainment, your driving modes from here. If you prefer, you can do it from this toggle on the steering wheel, as per other Mercedes models. Sport Plus, raising the revs there, and you've got the hotkeys here, the AMG dynamics and different settings that you can jump to. Over on the door, we've got ventilated seats, heated seats, the memory, electric seats, mirror and window controls, all the stuff that we kind of knew from before. It is this new steering wheel, as I mentioned. Cruise control is here, infotainment's over on that side. Very chunky, beefy shaped grips. I preferred the handles and grips of the older steering wheel, but the technology of the newer steering wheel. So kind of a little bit backwards and forwards on that. The G manufacturer grab handle, which will very much be needed shortly, over to the passenger side. And generally, a really, really nice place to be. Sound system in here was very good. We've got the infotainment screens. They're optional at the back as well inside this thing. And one thing that's kind of funny is when you turn it off and you step out of the car, right? You're just leaving it.
Your phone is still in the car.
It knows you've left it, and it tells you so politely. That's the standard Mercedes press vehicle phone, so they know who's driving it, etc, etc. That stays in there. Anyway, hopping out, look at this color in the sunshine. The color is amazing, and in fact, the bronzy golden wheels against the bright blue paint looks really nice. That's a winning specification. Obviously, night package 2, which gives you the gloss black elements and details all around, the black exhaust tailpipes, as I mentioned earlier, and then we've got the contrast of the red calipers on here as well. But you can also spec the contrast lower bumper sections, as you see, for example, on this lovely yellow G63. That's quite bold. I actually quite like it though. Really, really nice. So yes, time to go and enjoy the setup that we have here. There's a lot around, a lot to see. I mean, we'll have a nosy at that very shortly. And yeah, great start to the day driving the new G Wagon. Let's get a little bit more technical for a moment. In a second, we're going to get very technical with the G580, but there's something to talk about on the G63, which has changed from before, to do with the dynamic drive that I've just had. So not on the G450D, the G500 or the G580, but the G63 has a reworked, let's say, supercar style suspension. Of course, that helps minimize the body roll, helps with the dynamic drive. It's part of the performance pack, the off-road performance pack, to have a different setup so that you can enjoy that kind of driving even more, as you've just seen me experience. Now we're going to hop from the G63 to what was called the EQG originally. The EQ branding has now changed. It's the G580 with EQ technology. We're all just going to call it the G580, kind of in line with the other models. And one of the interesting things by having this right here is that, of course, there's a massive battery pack under there, and we're going to go and see the cutaways in a moment. And of course, to have the off-roading capabilities, that needs all of the strength, rigidity and underbody protection to go with it. So there's a lot to this. Now in a moment, I'm going to be taking out, I believe, the white car just over here, and I'm quite intrigued for that. We'll drive it on the road first and then we'll head off-road. But before we do, let's head in over here because I want to come and show you some of this stuff. This is really super interesting to take a look at. Firstly, because you have the ladder frame. Now, this is fundamentally the same in what you've seen in G-Wagons for many years, but in place of a bi-turbo V8 from the G63 are 4 electric motors and a 116 kilowatt-hour battery pack. What's fascinating about this, though, is that it's a G-Wagon, so it has to be uncompromising. It has to have an incredible wading depth. In fact, it's 850 millimeters, which is to about here. So everything that you see here can go safely underwater which is really quite interesting. We're going to take a closer look at what's going on inside all of this in the cutaway in just a second. But the battery pack itself obviously has to be significantly more reinforced than standard. So not only the die-cast aluminium top, but also the 57 kilo undertray that I mentioned, which can actually withstand the weight of 3 G-Wagons on a rock without piercing the battery. Obviously a very important thing. So you have torque vectoring with these 4 electric motors. Each one produces about 150 horsepower and around 300 newton meters of torque. So in total, you have about 300 newton meters more than the already crazy 850 newton meters in the G63. Each one of those motors has its own gearbox, and they effectively work in opposites. The motor up here runs over that side. On this side will run over towards the back here. Of course, you've got AC and DC charging, the inverter here to help with the charging procedure. Obviously, that sits just above the wading depth, but it's all based around this familiar structure, but with some amazing functionality. Come and take a closer look over here, and you can see literally within how this works, because effectively you not only have everything operating as we know, but you have a neutral in here in the gearbox to help decouple one end of it to be more efficient when you're driving at higher speeds. Obviously all of these different things that you have to think about, and it can actually connect back in 300 milliseconds back to full 14,000 RPM running at full speed. And it's amazing to actually see this up close. So this, effectively the motor on that side runs the axle over here and vice versa to the other side. So there's a lot going on here, a lot to this, but I think it's time to go and experience it for real, to go and hop into one of these with a body on top of it and go find out what the G580 is like. From how it looks underneath to the finished product, I'm going to be driving this car, in fact, in the same color, so looking very visually similar to the G63, but electric. The fully electric G-Wagon. And I know what you're thinking. If you're a petrol head and you're here for the G63, it's sacrilege to talk about an all-electric G-Wagon. But I want to go and experience this, and I'm led to believe that when we get to the off-roading and seeing what it's capable of, it's going to open up the eyes. What I want to do first, though, is go and drive it on the road. So let's learn a little bit about this. Things like the G-Raw, things about the interior, things that are a little bit different from the car I've just been out in. So come, let's hop in, let's go take this out. I love that keyless on the G-Wagon, big step up. And let's go see what it's like. What I immediately like about being in here is that everything works in the same way as its combustion engine siblings. You turn it on with a press of the same button. For sure, a few things have changed, like the G modes here, but we'll get to those when we're off-road. But everything else is the same. The way you put it into drive by pressing down on the stalk just here. We've got a gentle murmur in the background, intelligent recuperation. All of this we will learn as we go. Of course, slightly different displays, but I guess Mercedes did the EQS and S-Class being completely different models. They've done that across the lineup, and now this is a new chapter. EQ becomes more of a powertrain within a model line than it was before. And to drive initially, it's kind of similar. Of course, it's a whole lot quieter. I've just got the ventilated seat on right now, and that's actually the loudest thing that I can hear, which is quite funny. And there's almost, of course, sound is a big thing and what companies engineer into their cars. And there is this hum, which we'll hear more of as we're going to head straight out and go and find some interesting places to go and explore and have this first drive in here. Because, I mean, even if I go into the different systems and things in here, you can see obviously charging. You can charge at 200 kilowatts. This massive 116 kilowatt hour usable battery. It's officially 400 plus kilometers. Real world is obviously going to be less than that. But the point I will make is that if you're driving one of these in a city center or even off-roading, you're not driving 400 kilometers in a single day. That's just not something that people do. So understandably, you can kind of look at this both ways. Anyway, let's head down from here and we'll go explore somewhere nice. It's quite funny when you jump into effectively an identical car, but with a different powertrain, because your mind literally thinks you're driving the same car that you were driving before, but it's pretty different. You can notice that from the sound, or rather the lack of sound. Now, you have paddles on the back of the steering wheel because those control your different levels of recuperation. So if you press to the right, we have no recuperation on now, which allows the car to coast, right? It's not using the regenerative braking to charge up the battery. Whereas if you press on the left, you can go to normal or to strong, where it then brakes the car significantly more aggressively. You're kind of one pedal driving, although it's not quite as strong as that. I'm just going to leave it on normal for the time being. as it goes along, it feels a little bit softer than the 63, a little bit more of a waft down the road. Of course, we need to mute that sound, as we had and I spoke about a little bit earlier on. But this is where, to be honest, in normal driving, if you're not trying to make noise out of the thing, you would be hard pushed to know or to notice or to even think about the fact that you're in the fully electric take on the G Wagon. It feels so normal, it feels so identical, yet it has a whole new style or capability or level of technology to what's effectively possible when you're in the off-road, as I probably prefer it to just be a little bit more of a normal drive with no recuperation, just as it's slowing and lifting off a touch here as we head back towards the twisty roads, because I feel like I need to put this a little bit through its paces to try it on some interesting stuff. It's notably waftier, let's say, more of a lean through the corners than the performance suspension of the G63, but it has 1,164 Newton meters of torque. Technically, it has 2 horsepower more than the G63 at 587, which is 402 kilowatts. It's very confusing mixing bhp and kilowatts, but hey, that's the world we're in now. I have found my fun bit of road again, and the important button I need to press, which I haven't yet, is to pop it into sport mode, because this is going to firstly make a big change to the sound that you hear, and secondly to the ride of it. You definitely feel the pitch, for example, when I get on the brakes there. The entire thing shifts forward. The battery pack is actually 720 kilos that sits underneath. Now, a V8 is not exactly light, especially when you combine everything that it has to come with to make it operational. But what's amazing is how fast this actually is. This is notably quicker. I mean, it's a massive amount of torque additionally, even to the EQ mild hybrid of the G63 setup. It gets a move. It's notably less dynamic. Of course, the performance suspension side of the G63 is going to help with that. This is notably more of a wafter, more of a car that's going to wallow along and just have a gentle, easy cruise. But the sound is oddly akin to a V8. It feels like you've got that type of noise from it. I think the majority of people wouldn't even notice from inside which car they're actually driving. Hopping straight away into this G580 to go for the off-road. So joined here today by Michael. How are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you. It's nice that you want to get some experiences here with the electric G-Class.
Of course, it's what we are here for. I put my camera down for about 1 second and we're already having some fun. I see that smile. You've been doing this every day for a couple of weeks, but it's still fun.
Soon we will be there. It takes about 200 meters, and that is the starting point. And we start from standstill. You will feel how comfortable the car still is, driving with a little bit dynamic, and yeah, you will get your own impressions now. Are you ready? Can we start?
Okay, yeah, let's go for it. Wow, 100 kilometers an hour.
It's about 135. Now we turn left.
Silence. This is weird.
Yeah, and a lot of torque. We have a lot of torque. You see.
This is insane.
Yeah, and still comfortable. Look,
somehow, yes.
My movements are not that big. Turning the wheel is really easy. The car is doing what I want to do. It becomes sometimes a little bit bumpy here, but it's not the car, it's the track.
This is a totally different experience.
Yeah.
I cannot believe what I'm looking at and then what we're feeling. It feels like almost computer game-esque. The terrain is flying past, but it's nowhere nearly as dramatic as it looks like it should be.
Right hand turn.
This is utterly ridiculous. Whoa!
Yeah, interesting. And the view. The view is nice.
Yeah, let's just spare a moment to take in the scenery from where we are. Wow! It also just happens as a nice little bonus to give you a lot of information and things here. Tire pressure, suspension, angles. Oh. I don't know where to look. I kind of want to look at all the screens and the data, but as soon as I do, we go over a big bump and I get get lost. Elevation, all the different modes, and this amazing view to top it off. So this is what it looks like when you're driving in the wet.
It's
absolutely caked, but it was fun.
Thank you for joining
Perfect.
me.
Pleasure. Right, out we hop. Thank you for that experience. What a time. We'll see you later. A quick run over here because that white G580 down there, I think is about to do a G-turn, which is what we're going to be up doing next. There's this whole area, playground down there. Wait for the moment. There we go, do the famous G-turn. There are reasons for this. However, to explain that in more detail, let's go hop in the car. It's time for this dark green car with Rene. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. How are you?
Good, thank you very much. Let's climb on in. The nice thud of the G doors again. So, time to do some G-turns and G-steering. I should ask the obvious question. What's the benefit of the G-turn?
Like if you have an obstacle in front of you, like a tree falling down, you can make 180 degrees and go forward.
Straight the other way without having
Straight
to
the
do
other
a
way.
20-point turn.
Exactly, that's the point.
First up is
There's the
G-steering.
G-steering. Like as you see, tight pylons here, but no problem for us with the G-steering. I'm away of the gas, and as you see,
Wow.
it's slightly adrift. And you can perform it with this big car, this parkour here.
That's incredible, the way it just goes around. That's really, really bizarre.
Now it's time to do the G-turn.
Yeah.
That's the second function. So we have to be in D for driving position.
Yeah.
Driving position P. We activate it with this here. You have
Okay.
to hold the steering wheel at that position. The right pedal to do it in the right direction,
Yeah.
or the left pedal to do it in the left direction.
Okay.
So we start with right.
Hold the paddle.
Hold the pedal, hold the steering wheel, and we yes. So let's turn. That was it. And now it's your turn.
That's so cool. Okay, so you have to hold the steering wheel dead
Yeah,
straight.
exactly at that position. And now you turn. Perfect job.
There we go.
You can try it also in another
So you got to
direction.
go the other way. So back into G mode,
Exactly.
left, and the same process. This is really, really bizarre. Right, let me hop out because we're going to see this from outside. Professional demonstration. That is utterly absurd. It takes 4 seconds for a rotation. You can do a maximum of 2 full, so 720 degrees. We are back then. That was a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it.
For sure. That
Now
was...
you're officially G approved.
I love it. Thank you. Alrighty, let's hop out. The day is flying by. I think my biggest takeaway at this point is how much the G580 has been normalized as a car. What I said earlier, right? It's the feeling, the sound, the look of the car being so much more like a regular G Wagon, a G500. Of course, this is spec'd with the EQ style grille, the gloss black style grille. You can opt to have the regular front grille. And then when you look at it, you don't know that it's an electric G Wagon or a standard G Wagon. Of course, driving earlier in the new G63 with its mild hybrid setup has been right up my street. Like I said, when I came here a few years ago to drive this model in its earlier form and experience what it was like, game changer from the previous generation, just a massive, massive leap. Not just a small step as you often experience when a manufacturer goes from one car to its next generation, but for these it was the previous one just stepped up a whole staircase. This of course has stepped it up a touch further beyond that. Obviously there's a weight penalty. Do you notice that? No, not really. There is a price increase, waiting for the final pricing, certainly from my side, to know what this is going to come in at. But there's so much more that you can do in terms of the optional configuration, in terms of the things that you can choose to actually have on the car to make it even more bespoke, to make it even more unique. And of course, these things are built in Graz in Austria, beside the Scherkel mountain, where they are tested, become formally G approved, and that place is unlike any other. So today we've seen the G-turn, we've seen G-steering, we've run through the different modes, and I've just been really surprised by what the G580 does overall as a package. I think in the normal world, if you're driving a commute, if you're driving in city centres, if you're driving even off-road, to be honest, if you just want the car to be an off-road machine, this is immense. This can do a lot, and there's a lot I haven't shown you as well in terms of the off-roading here. Of course, if you want the soundtrack, you're going to want the G63, and that's probably the camp I would fall in. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to run one of these for a bit. I'd be really fascinated to find out more about it. But the G63 is a G63, right? So maybe it's time again. We shall see. For now, a big thanks to everyone today, to Michael, to Rene, to the whole team who made all of this possible. It's been an action-packed day, experiencing multiple different G-Wagons. In fact, 4 in total, I think, that I've driven since arriving here in France. That's it for this time, though. Onwards to the next stop. So thank you very much for your support, guys. I appreciate it an awful lot. But that is it for this time, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.